Take your seats, please. We'll be starting very shortly. Right. So have your attention, please. Right, a few parish notices before we start the talk. On the 3rd and 4th of August, there are screenings of Fritz Lang's Metropolis and Anthony Asquith's Underground at Wilton's Music Hall with accompaniment. This Sunday, the 7th of August, there's the London Hat Walk. Details on the Webular site. I believe Tim Eyre has some copies of Resign available at £1 each. Is this the new copy?
Yeah. How much? The new one?
No. The new one?
The old one.
The old one, sorry.
The current one.
The current one.
You should have said it was a new one. It's sold it anyway.
Yeah. The next meeting of the club is on the 7th of September, when Seth DeVos will be talking about London members clubs. He's just published a book, Behind Closed Doors, The Secret Life of
Sold out already?
London Private Members Club. Sold out, really.
Like for one day?
Being reprinted, I believe.
Yes.
Sorry, is that the fellow with the book about club politics?
No, it's his subsequent book about...
New one about one, but it's the same fellow.
Same fellow.
Different book.
And just introduce tonight's talk. Tim Eyre will be talking about the Aztec Pantheon. Thank you, Tim. Right, good evening. So this evening we are going to be talking about... Sorry? This side. Right. Okay. Alright, so this evening we are going to be looking at the Aztecs and their pantheon. The talk will be about 40 minutes long, and let's have questions afterwards, as is usual for these public lectures. I will warn you in advance that what we are about to talk about is somewhat gory, for that is the nature of the Aztecs, but the pictures that we're going to look at in the slides are probably at worst 15 rated, so you don't have to worry about disturbing images. I am a telephone engineer, not a historian, so there may be some simplification here, so those who are versed in history, please be merciful. Oh, is this thing working?
It was earlier on.
Should be.
Okay. The light's working.
Shall I just shout slide in somebody's...
It's possibly that it needs new batteries.
Culture in what is today Mexico between the 1430s and their conquest by the Spaniards in 1521. The founding myth of the Aztecs was to migrate away from Aztlan, which is a place that nobody actually knows where it is. So it's it is a mythical place. And
I'm going to have to restart the slideshow.
here we go. There. So
Okay, sorry about
right. So they were told by a shaman who heard from Huitzilopochtli in a dream to leave Aztlan, and they wandered through Mexico, what is today Mexico, for a couple of 100 years until they saw this, an eagle with a snake in its beak standing on a cactus. And they saw that on a rocky island in the middle of a salty lake and decided that this would be an excellent place to settle. So this image is on the flag of Mexico and is seen all over Mexico. It's an important image in modern Mexican culture, and it comes from the founding myth of the Aztecs. So why is it that the Aztecs decided to pitch up on this rocky island in the middle of a lake? So this lake is Lake Texcoco, and it is located where Mexico City is today. And the reason they ended up there was that for a while they settled in a place on the bank, on the shore of Lake Texcoco, and at the permission of another tribe. And they invited a nobleman in this tribe to offer one of his daughters to become a bride of Huitzilopochtli, which you'll remember is their patron god, of whom we will hear more later. And he thought, well, that sounds good. My daughter being the bride of a god. So off she went, and the Aztecs treated her like a goddess for a while, not very long, which is the way that the Aztecs did things, and then ritually sacrificed her, and then flayed off her skin. And when Daddy came along to see how his daughter was doing in her elevated role as the bride of Huitzilopochtli, he was more than a little disappointed to see a priest dancing wearing his daughter's skin. And as we all know how pleased people are about things, it's about the gap between their expectations and reality. And that gap was somewhat large here, so the Aztecs were chased away from the banks of shore of Lake Texcoco in a hail of arrows. And they ended up at this lake, this island in the lake. However, they thrived from this position. They built a city of some 200,000 people, maybe as many as 400,000, on islands in the lake and population on the shores of the lake as well. They fed fresh water into the city with aqueducts. Around this time, London had a population of about 50,000, and the biggest cities in the old world were Constantinople and Paris, both of which were about 200,000 people. So it was a big city. It was very orderly. Roads weren't much use in the middle of a saline lake, so they got around in canoes. They were a very clean people. They took steam baths and so forth. They were the early civilization to require compulsory universal education, although that was more from the point of view of training warriors and making everyone fit for war, rather than just a love of learning. They had good agricultural technology, so they worked out technique fields in the lake so that they could grow stuff in the... Is this working now? So here we've got their city, Tenochtitlan. This is where Mexico City is today, and this is Mexico. And they went on, despite this agricultural technology, very good knowledge of astronomy, very good societal organisation, very adept at prosecuting military campaigns. They didn't have wheels. They did invent wheels in the sense that they used them on a child's toy. So there was an archaeological find of a child's toy with little wheels, like a little animal that could be pulled along. But they didn't scale this up to using for a cart or anything like that. They also never invented writing. So writing apparently has only ever been invented 3 times in the world, but it tends to catch on because it's quite useful. So they documented things by using pictures called codices, and they told stories in these great big codices using these beautiful pictures. And they were sort of pre-Bronze Age when it came to technology with metal, so they didn't use metal weapons, for example. But they did have very sophisticated crafts. In particular, they were very good at featherwork. And they went on to conquer much of central Mexico. So we can see in these brown parts here the states that they've managed to, areas that they've conquered. The unit of, political unit in Mexico at the time, in Mesoamerica, was more the city-state rather than nations, rather than territory. So they were conquering tribes, and once they'd conquered a tribe, they would demand tribute, and they would take taxes from the tribe. Or these were payable in luxury goods, because also they didn't have the technology of money. So tribute was paid in luxury goods, things like feathers, bolts of cloth, avocados, luxury food, and these were all sent to Tenochtitlan. And they had a market in Tenochtitlan where these goods were sold. Traders were considered very important to Aztec culture. And this ongoing pattern of conquering was crucial to the Aztec way of life, because their god, Huitzilopochtli, their patron god, so it was very much polytheistic society, hundreds of gods, and when they conquered a tribe, the way that in their codices was to show a broken temple. And the broken temple indicated that they'd got to the centre of this tribe and deposed their gods. But their attitude wasn't so much supplanting that tribe's gods with their own gods, rather it was they could then take those gods and add them to their own pantheon and get the power that was shown through those gods for themselves. So war was, so here we see, very important to the Aztecs. We see here a picture of a statue of an Aztec warrior. This is at a museum in Mexico City where I visited several years ago. And this weapon here is a wooden club edged with it could feathered headdress and a shield. The soldiers typically fought in winter and summer, leaving spring and autumn to do agriculture, to grow the food. But the purpose of war, one of the key purposes of war, was to capture victims for sacrifice. So it wasn't so much about scorched earth, kill everybody. It was more grab sacrificial victims and take them back to Tenochtitlan to sacrifice for Huitzilopochtli and other gods.
Quite right, too.
And so important was it to them to capture these. And this Montezuma, the emperor of the Aztecs, told Cortes, the leader of the Spaniards, that the reason that they let the Tlaxcalans continue to exist without actually being conquered was that they could have what was called wars of flowers with them. And the purpose of these wars of flowers was a war without hatred, where it was a ritual, so that they were done in the 16th century. And you can see that we've got somebody. This human sacrifice was for this god Huitzilopochtli. So Huitzilopochtli, this means hummingbird from the south, because in the same way that we view north as being up, the Aztecs viewed south as being on the left. So everything like moved through 90 degrees. And so it's hummingbird from the south. Why hummingbird? They believed that the souls of warriors who had died in combat came back as hummingbirds, and blue hummingbirds at that. So you can see that he's dressed up as a hummingbird with this mask. And this is the turquoise serpent weapon. And this is very important in relation to sacrifice. So this is a contemporary illustration of human sacrifice. So how did they